Hello everyone. I sincerely wish you all good health and peace in your hearts, no matter where life takes you. Love is never simple, especially when it's tested by judgment and distance. CEO Toan's mother doesn't accept me perhaps because of my past, or simply because I don't fit the life she imagined for her son. But love, real love, is something worth fighting for. And even when Toan was drowning in his own troubles at work, burdened and distant, I saw the weight in his eyes. I said something, just one honest truth, and it reached him. Sometimes, a few quiet words can shake someone awake. Now the question is, will love be enough to carry us through everything that's trying to pull us apart?
The smell of steamed rice lingered in the air as the first family meal began. The woman sat stiffly at the head of the table, her eyes cold, judgmental. The young girl beside her tried to keep her hands from trembling. She had faced hunger, loneliness, and betrayal, but never this kind of quiet cruelty masked behind porcelain dishes and sharp words. "You used to be someone's wife," the mother suddenly said, her voice calm but cutting. "And now you sit here? Do you think you deserve a place in this house?" The room fell silent. The young man across the table clenched his fists. He had heard enough. "She's not what you think she is," he said, his voice firm. "She saved my life. When no one else was there, she was." But the woman wouldn't listen. "A girl with that past will only bring shame to this family. Love doesn't erase what's already been done." The girl to Diem lowered her eyes, fighting back tears. The humiliation burned. But she stayed, not because she had no pride, but because she had finally found someone who believed in her, someone worth fighting for. That night, she sat on the balcony alone. The stars above the city blinked faintly through clouds, as if they, too, were unsure of what tomorrow held. Inside, the CEO stared at his computer screen. Numbers blurred, reports piled up. His company was on the verge of crisis and internal betrayal. A financial scandal quietly unfolding. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. Tu Diem walked in quietly and placed a cup of tea next to him. "You can solve this," she said softly. "Not because you're strong, but because you know how it feels to be broken. You don't give up on people. Don't start giving up on yourself now." He looked at her, really looked. Behind her tired eyes was a strength he hadn't noticed before, an unshakable faith in him died in them. In that moment, something shifted. He stood up, walked over, and took her hand. "Let's face them together. My mother, the world, even failure. I don't care anymore, Diem. You've given me more than anyone ever has, truth." But the world wasn't finished testing them. His mother threatened to cut ties. Shareholders demanded answers. Rumors spread about Diem's past. But she didn't run. She stood beside him, silent but steady, and slowly, his mother began to see. Not in words, but in the way her son smiled again, in the way Diem cooked soup when he worked late, in the way silence at the table turned into gentle conversations. Love had not one easily dotted bled. It broke, but it stayed. Toan stood in silence after Tu Diem's words, her voice still echoing in his mind like a whisper through the storm. It wasn't just her honesty that shook him. It was the pain behind it. A woman who had endured so much still had the strength to remind him of who he was, of the man he once promised himself he'd become. Somewhere between the boardrooms, contracts, and corporate betrayals, he had forgotten the value of why he worked so hard in the first place. That night, Toan didn't sleep. He went over every decision he had made in the past 3 months. Every signature, every handshake, every moment he had trusted the wrong person. By dawn, he had formed a plan. At the company headquarters, he walked into the executive meeting with a calm intensity. All eyes turned toward him, some surprised, others nervous. His voice was clear. He announced an internal audit on all financial operations, especially those under Deputy Director Hung's management. The room fell into a tense silence. Hung tried to laugh it off, but Toan's gaze didn't waver. If there is nothing to hide, then no one has anything to fear, he said firmly. His leadership, once passive and trusting, had transformed into something sharper, something undeniable. Later that evening, Toan returned home. He found Diem sitting in the garden, quietly watering the small plant she had nurtured since she arrived. The sun painted her silhouette in gold. He approached, and for a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, he broke the silence. "You were right," he said. "I let my fear control me. I was afraid of losing everything I built. But I forgot that not everything valuable can be built with bricks or numbers." Diem looked at him, her eyes soft but uncertain. "My mother," he continued, "may never change. But I will not let her fear decide for me. I want you here, not because you saved me or because I owe you, but because you remind me of the man I want to be." Her lips trembled. She looked away, fighting back emotion. He reached for her hand. "Will you stay?" She didn't speak immediately. The air was still, as if even the wind was waiting. Then, slowly, Diem nodded. The days that followed brought both light and shadows. Though Diem agreed to stay, the atmosphere in Toan's house was far from peaceful. His mother, cold and unrelenting, barely spoke a word to her. At meals, silence filled the table like an unwanted guest. But Diem, graceful in her restraint, chose kindness over conflict. She cooked when she could, helped the housekeeper, and greeted Toan's mother with quiet respect, even when it wasn't returned. Toan noticed everything. One night, as rain poured outside and thunder rumbled in the distance, a loud knock came at the front door. It was Toan's most trusted assistant. He was soaked, breathing heavily, holding a folder tightly in his hands. "We have a problem," he said. Inside the folder were the results of the internal audit. Toan read in silence, his eyes narrowing with every page. The deputy director, had funneled company funds through shell contracts. Large amounts had disappeared. Worse, one of the fake projects had Toan's digital signature on it, a clear setup. If leaked to the media or reported to the authorities, he could be accused of fraud. "They're planning to frame me," Toan whispered. Diem, who had been standing behind him, gently placed her hand on his shoulder. "You won't fight this alone," she said. But Toan shook his head. This could ruin everything. "If I fall, I don't want you to be dragged down with me." Her reply came without hesitation. "You once said you wanted to be the man you're proud of. Then fight for your name and for the truth. Let me stand beside you, not behind you." Her words hit him like a wave, calm but powerful. For the first time in days, he felt steady. Over the next few hours, Toan and Toon outlined a plan. They gathered all evidence, listed all compromised employees, and prepared for the board confrontation. Meanwhile, Diem stayed awake by his side, helping him organize timelines and statements. She didn't say much, but her presence was like a quiet flame in the darkness, steady, warm, and unwavering. And just before dawn, Toan turned to her. "I don't care what my mother thinks anymore. "I don't care what the world says," he said softly. "You're not just someone I want by my side. You're someone I need." Tu Diem looked at him, her eyes filled with quiet strength. "Then let's face this together." Lesson: true love requires courage, especially in times of storm in life. Love is often celebrated in moments of joy, shared laughter, whispered promises, gentle gestures. But the truest form of love is revealed not when everything is perfect, but when everything is falling apart. The story of Tu Diem and CEO Toan is not just a tale of romance. It is a testament to the courage it takes to protect what truly matters. Tu Diem was not accepted by Toan's mother. She was seen as an outsider, a burden, perhaps even a threat to the family's image. Yet, instead of running away or responding with anger, she chose quiet strength. She gave respect even when it wasn't returned. She offered kindness when it was least deserved. Through her actions, she taught us that dignity in the face of rejection is one of the noblest forms of self-respect. Meanwhile, Toan faced a crisis that could ruin his career and reputation. Betrayed by someone he once trusted, he was on the verge of collapse. But it was in his darkest hour that Tu Diem stood by him, not as a bystander, but as a true partner. Her words gave him clarity. Her presence gave him strength. Her loyalty reminded him of who he was. From their journey, we learn an invaluable lesson. Love is not just about emotions. It's about action, courage, and standing firm when the world turns its back. Sometimes, the greatest battles we fight are not with others, but within ourselves. To choose integrity over fear, love over pride, and trust over doubt. And sometimes, the one who saves us is not the strongest, but the one who simply refuses to leave. In a world where love is often tested by external forces, family expectations, career pressures, or personal fears, may we remember that real love doesn't run. It stays. It fights. It believes. And above all, it gives us the courage to be the best version of ourselves.